You are not explaining yourself. You are defending yourself in a trial that ended years ago, and the judge may now be living inside you. You know the moment. A conversation is already over, but your mind is still at the table. You replay the exact words. You find the sentence that could have prevented the misunderstanding. You imagine sending one more message, not because there is new information, but because the old information did not produce the verdict you needed. So you add context. You soften the part that sounded angry. You explain what happened before what happened. You make room for their intentions, their mood, their history, and the possibility that you are wrong. Then you read the message again and remove the sentence that sounds too certain. By the time you press send, your truth has become a legal document written for a court that may never have intended to hear the case. Sometimes explanation is necessary. A doctor needs detail. A workplace conflict may need documentation. A legal or safety situation may require you to repeat the facts carefully and preserve a record. There are relationships in which the other person holds real power, and silence can carry consequences. This is not about those moments. It is about the other kind, the conversation in which the facts are already available, but you keep speaking because being misunderstood feels unbearable. The moment when you are no longer trying to make the message clear. You are trying to make another person grant you permission to believe your own experience. Carl Jung did not write about over-explaining as a named behavior, but his ideas about the persona, emotional complexes, the shadow, and individuation offer a powerful way to understand what may be happening beneath it. Because sometimes the person across from you is not the only listener in the room. Behind them sits an older audience. A parent who called you dramatic. A teacher who assumed the worst. A partner who demanded evidence for pain they caused. A younger version of you who learned that the right explanation might restore belonging. You are speaking to one person, but you may be defending yourself before all of them. And once you recognize that second audience, you can separate the explanation that creates understanding from the explanation that slowly abandons you. A child says, "That hurt me." An adult answers, "No, it did not. You are too sensitive." The child tries again. "That is not what I meant. I was tired. I was not trying to be rude. I only wanted you to stop laughing." The explanation grows because the first sentence was not enough to keep the child's experience inside the family version of reality. Perhaps nothing dramatic happens. No door slams. No one leaves. The family continues eating. But the child learns something precise. A feeling is not safe merely because it is true. It must be presented correctly. It must arrive without anger, inconvenience, contradiction. If the other person rejects it, the task is to improve the presentation. Years later, that child may become an adult who can explain anything except the simple fact that they are hurt. They know how to provide context before anyone asks. They anticipate objections in the middle of a sentence. They apologize for the tone of words they have not yet spoken. They can describe the other person's position so generously that their own position disappears. Modern psychology has studied something called rejection sensitivity. It describes a tendency to anxiously expect rejection, detect it quickly in ambiguous situations, and react strongly when it seems to appear. This does not mean every person who over-explains has rejection sensitivity. It means that misunderstanding can become emotionally larger when earlier experience has associated rejection with the loss of safety, support, or belonging. The present conversation may be small. The expectation behind it may be old. Someone says, "I do not remember it that way." Your body hears. Your memory cannot be trusted. Someone says, "I need some space." Your body hears. You have become too much and are about to be abandoned. Someone says nothing for an hour. Your mind begins preparing a defense against a charge that has not been made. That is why telling yourself to stop overthinking rarely works. The words are not only thoughts, they are an attempt to restore a bond, reverse a judgment, or prevent an old consequence from arriving again. The explanation is trying to make you safe. The tragedy is that it may also be teaching you not to trust a truth until someone else approves it. Jung used the word persona for the social face through which we meet the world. The persona is not simply a lie. It is an instrument of adaptation. You need one to move between the different rooms of life. You do not speak to a grieving friend exactly as you speak in a job interview. You do not bring every private feeling into every public encounter. The mask becomes dangerous when you forget that it is a mask. For the person who fears being misunderstood, one persona can become especially powerful: the reasonable one. The reasonable one never reacts too quickly. They understand everyone's motives. They make their pain easy to receive. They do not accuse. They do not interrupt. They can explain why the person who hurt them was tired, afraid, overwhelmed, or wounded by someone else. Reasonableness is a real virtue, but it can become a hiding place. Underneath it may be a private rule: I'm allowed to be hurt only if my case is flawless. So you remove the anger, because anger might make you look irrational. You remove certainty, because certainty might make you look arrogant. You remove the boundary, because a boundary might be called punishment. Then you offer the remaining fragments and hope the listener will reconstruct the person you edited out. The persona says, if I am calm enough, fair enough, and complete enough, no one can dismiss me. But another person does not need a logical weakness in order to dismiss you. They can simply refuse the premise. They can decide your feeling is inconvenient. They can misunderstand you, because misunderstanding protects something they do not want to examine. When that happens, the persona does not question the court. It questions its own performance. Maybe I sounded harsh. Maybe I left out one detail. Maybe if I begin with their perspective, they will finally make room for mine. The mask works harder. The person underneath it grows quieter. Jung's concern was not that we should destroy the persona and become completely unfiltered. A life without social adaptation is not freedom. The deeper task is to stop confusing the role with the whole personality. You can be reasonable without making reasonableness the price of your right to exist. Jung described complexes as emotionally charged clusters within the psyche. A complex can gather memories, expectations, bodily reactions, and images around a particular theme. When activated, it can behave with a strange degree of independence. You intend to remain calm, but another voice begins speaking through you. You intend to send 2 sentences, but an hour later you are still writing. The current event has touched an older arrangement. Imagine someone named Daniel. At work, a colleague tells him that a decision felt dismissive. Daniel explains what he intended. The colleague answers, I understand your intention. I am telling you how it affected the project. Nothing about the exchange is catastrophic. Yet Daniel feels heat in his face. His heart accelerates. He begins listing every meeting, every email, every time he supported the team. He is no longer clarifying one decision. He is defending the identity of being a good and considerate person. The colleague is discussing an action. Daniel's complex hears an accusation about the whole self. This can happen in the opposite direction too. You tell someone that their action hurt you. They answer with an explanation of their intention. You try to clarify the impact. Soon both of you are presenting evidence, each person trying to escape the role of the guilty one. 2 courtrooms have opened in the same room. A complex is not proof that the current concern is imaginary. Daniel may have been misunderstood. You may have been treated unfairly. Jung's idea is useful because it asks a different question. Why has this moment acquired so much psychic energy? Why does correction feel like condemnation? Why does disagreement feel as if your entire character has been placed on the witness stand? When a complex is activated, more information does not always reduce the intensity. The intensity is not being generated only by missing information. It is being generated by the meaning attached to the verdict. If they misunderstand me, I am bad. If they remain upset, I am unsafe. If they do not validate my memory, perhaps I have no right to trust it. The explanation keeps expanding because the case is secretly about everything. There is a simple way to know when explanation has changed into something else. You have already been understood factually, but you do not feel released. The other person can repeat your position accurately. They simply do not agree. Or they agree that you are hurt, but they will not accept responsibility. Or they understand the boundary and dislike it. So you keep going. You search for the sentence that will create not comprehension, but conversion. You do not only want them to know what you mean. You want their internal world to rearrange itself around your truth. That is a power no explanation can guarantee. Words can offer information. They can invite empathy. They can repair confusion between people acting in good faith. But words cannot force honesty, readiness, remorse, or emotional capacity into another person when the hidden goal is a verdict. Each failed explanation becomes evidence that the case was not strong enough. You hand them more proof. They build a smaller courtroom. Perhaps they change the subject. Perhaps they focus on one imperfect word. Perhaps they ask why you waited so long to say something, then use your answer as the next thing to dispute. The case can continue forever because the problem is no longer the evidence. Sometimes the listener is willing but overwhelmed. Sometimes both people need a pause. Sometimes your own message truly is unclear. Humility matters. You can be wrong. Memory can be incomplete. A boundary can be expressed badly. Self-trust is not the belief that your first interpretation is infallible. But humility is different from permanent prosecution. You can remain open to correction without treating every disagreement as proof that you have no center of your own. Every persona creates a shadow. The shadow is not simply the worst part of a person. It contains what the conscious identity refuses to recognize or is not permitted to carry. If your persona must always be understanding, the shadow may carry the anger. If your persona must always be fair, the shadow may carry the wish to stop negotiating. If your persona survives by being agreeable, the shadow may contain a clean and uncomplicated. Over-explaining can be anger forced to speak like a lawyer. One part of you wants to say, "I know what happened," the persona adds, "but I completely understand why you may see it differently." One part wants to say, "This is not acceptable." The persona adds 6 paragraphs proving that the boundary is not selfish. One part wants to leave. The persona remains in the room, explaining why leaving should not be interpreted as cruel. The anger does not disappear. It moves into the shadow and returns indirectly. You become exhausted after conversations you appeared to handle calmly. You imagine speeches in which you finally say everything without restraint. You feel contempt for the person you kept trying to persuade. Or the anger turns inward and asks why you were weak enough to need their understanding. The shadow is not always correct. Anger can distort. Refusal can become rigidity. The point is not to obey every excluded impulse. It is to hear what the impulse is protecting. Perhaps the anger is protecting a limit. Perhaps it is protecting grief from becoming an argument. Perhaps it is saying that your experience should not have to become a performance before it is allowed into the room. Integrating that anger does not mean shouting more convincingly. It may mean using fewer words because you no longer require language to hide the force of the boundary. This hurt me. I am willing to discuss what happened. I am not willing to debate whether I am allowed to have been affected. That is not the shadow taking control. It is the conscious personality finally making room for something the mask had excluded. There is a painful assumption inside endless explanation. If the other person still does not understand, the message must be incomplete. But confusion is not the only reason people fail to meet you. Sometimes they understand the words and reject the responsibility attached to them. Sometimes accepting your account would require them to revise the story they tell about themselves. Sometimes they lack the emotional capacity to stay present with another person's pain. Sometimes they are protecting a relationship structure that benefits them. And sometimes they simply disagree. Do not turn every disagreement into manipulation. Do not assume that anyone who sees an event differently is acting in bad faith. Two sincere people can remember the same moment differently. A person may need time. They may have information you do not have. But good faith has a recognizable shape. It asks questions to understand rather than to trap. It can reflect what you said before answering it. It can acknowledge impact without pretending intention. It can admit uncertainty. It can take responsibility for one part of an event without demanding that the entire relationship become a trial. Bad faith has a different rhythm. Every answer becomes a new charge. Every detail is removed from its context. The standard of proof moves when you approach it. Your exhaustion is treated as evidence that you were never clear. In such a conversation, more explanation may not create more understanding. It may provide more material for the same pattern. A locked door is not a complicated door. There comes a moment when the question is no longer, how can I explain this better? The question is, what is this listener doing with what I have already said? The internet offers an easy answer. Stop explaining. Become silent. Let them wander. Make yourself unreadable. That advice can create a new persona just as rigid as the old one. The person who once explained everything now explains nothing. They call withdrawal a boundary. They use silence to avoid repair. They treat emotional distance as proof of strength. The reasonable mask is replaced by the untouchable mask. Jung's work was not a strategy for winning power games. Individuation is not becoming impossible to reach. It is becoming less divided within yourself. Healthy silence is not designed to punish the listener or make them chase you. It begins when the message has been delivered, and repeating it would require you to abandon yourself. Healthy expression matters too. Research on emotional suppression does not support the fantasy that hiding everything automatically makes relationships stronger. People need language for repair, intimacy, correction, apology, and change. The difference is not simply between speaking and silence. It is the difference between expression and prosecution. Expression says, "This is what happened inside me." Prosecution says, "I cannot rest until you agree that I had the right to experience it." Expression can listen as well as speak. It can revise itself. It can remain curious. Prosecution cannot end without acquittal. The goal is not to speak less so that you appear powerful. The goal is to stop using speech as a way to request permission to stand where you already are. Every courtroom has a center. In the inner courtroom, the center belongs to the judge. Their reaction determines what evidence you present. Their standards determine which feelings are admissible. Their attention determines how long you are allowed to speak. While explaining yourself, you may believe you are fighting to preserve your reality, but slowly, the other person's mind becomes the place where reality is decided. You stop asking, "What do I know?" You ask, "What can I make them accept?" You stop asking, "What boundary do I need?" You ask, "What boundary can I justify without being disliked?" You stop asking, "Is this relationship capable of repair?" You ask, "What combination of words will finally make repair unavoidable?" By the end, you may be understood more completely and known less truthfully. Jung described individuation as coming to selfhood, a movement away from losing the self inside an external role or collective expectation. That does not mean ignoring the social world. It means developing a center that can remain in relationship without being entirely authored by the relationship. Over-explaining can look like self-expression while quietly performing the opposite movement. The self is translated into whatever form the imagined judge might approve. The cost is not only time or dignity. The cost is contact with your own experience before it has been cross-examined. What did I feel before I explained why it was reasonable? What did I want before I described why wanting it was fair? What did I know before I began constructing the argument against myself? These questions return the center of the courtroom to the person whose life is actually being discussed. Imagine a woman named Mara at a family dinner. For years, her brother has made jokes about a private period of her life. Everyone calls it affection. Mara has laughed too, then gone home angry with herself. This time she says, "I do not want that story told about me anymore." Her brother smiles. "You know I am only joking." The old courtroom opens. Mara begins to explain. She describes why that year was painful. She reminds him of another dinner, another joke, the expression on her face. She makes clear that she is not accusing him of being a bad person. She says she knows humor is how the family connects. Then she notices what she is doing. The boundary is disappearing inside its defense. She stops. "I believe you are joking," she says. "I still do not want the story told about me." Her brother thinks she is overreacting. Her mother says the evening has become uncomfortable. No one grants the verdict Mara wanted. For several minutes, her body feels as if something terrible is about to happen. Belonging once depended on making the family understand. Now she is letting the misunderstanding remain in the room. She does not win the case. She leaves the courtroom. This is not a fantasy in which one clear boundary transforms everyone. Her brother may test it again. Mara may need to leave the table. The family may continue telling a story in which she is too sensitive. The change is smaller and more difficult. Their story about her no longer determines whether she can hear herself. The next time you feel the explanation expanding, do not begin by forcing yourself into silence. Ask what the words are trying to accomplish. Am I offering information? Am I attempting repair? Or am I asking this person to issue a verdict that makes my experience legitimate? Information has an endpoint. Repair requires participation from both people. A request for permission can continue forever. Then reduce the message to 3 things. What happened? what it affected, what you're asking for, or choosing now. When you changed the plan without telling me, I felt disregarded. I want us to confirm changes together. If that cannot happen, I will make separate arrangements. You may need more than 3 sentences. Complexity is real, but notice whether each additional sentence adds information or attempts to control the listener's judgment. Next, look for evidence of good faith. Can the person reflect what you said? Can they ask a question without turning it into a charge? Can they admit one part of the impact? Are they trying to understand, even when they disagree? If the answer is yes, explanation may be building a bridge. If the answer is repeatedly no, decide how many times you're willing to return to the same point. You can say, I have explained what I mean. I am willing to discuss what happens next, but I am not willing to keep arguing about whether my experience exists. Then notice the discomfort that follows. The impulse to send one final paragraph may become stronger. Do not shame it. It may be an old protector preparing evidence because it believes belonging is about to be withdrawn. Tell it something more honest, then calm down. I know what you are trying to prevent, but we are not returning to that courtroom tonight. Write the unsent explanation if you need to. Let every argument appear on the page. Then ask which judge each paragraph is trying to persuade. The current partner, the parent from 20 years ago, the teacher who had already decided who you were, yourself. Keep the part that communicates. Keep the part that repairs. Keep the part that protects a necessary record. Do not send the part whose only purpose is to beg a closed court for a different history. And remember the contexts that require caution. If there is abuse, coercion, discrimination, legal risk, medical risk, or a serious power imbalance, a simple boundary sentence may not be enough. Documentation, professional guidance, advocacy. The goal is not to make vulnerability more dangerous in the name of self-trust. The practice is not fewer words at any cost. It is speech that remains connected to the person speaking. Somewhere inside you, the courtroom may still be standing. The lights are on. The evidence is arranged. Every sentence you have ever rehearsed waits in a folder. At the highest bench sits a judge whose face has changed many times. A parent, a partner, a friend, a room full of strangers, and sometimes your own face. The judge asks for one more explanation, one final detail, one perfect sentence that proves you were not selfish, dramatic, cruel, confused, weak. You may never find it. Not because your case is empty, because the freedom you are seeking cannot be issued by that court. Self-trust is not absolute certainty. It does not mean your memory is perfect or your interpretation cannot change. It means you can remain close to your experience while allowing reality to correct you. You can listen without disappearing. You can apologize without surrendering your entire character. You can be misunderstood without immediately treating misunderstanding as a sentence. Perhaps the person across from you will understand tomorrow. Perhaps they never will. Their understanding may matter deeply. It may determine whether the relationship continues, but it does not have to determine whether your inner life is admitted into existence. The next time you feel yourself building the case, pause before adding another page. Ask whether the message is unclear or whether the court is simply refusing to close. Say what is true. Listen for what is true in return. Repair what can be repaired. Protect what needs protection. Then allow the gavel to fall without waiting for the verdict. You do not need the judge to declare you innocent. You need to stop putting your life on the witness stand.